Yeah. Okay, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. This is the March meeting of the League of Women Voters Manatee County Natural Resources Action Team. I'm the chair, Randy Miller. This meeting is open to all, and if you're not a member, you are certainly more than encouraged and welcome to join. Learn more about the chapter on our website at lwvmanatee.org. And there's a link there giving you the opportunity to join. Hope take advantage of it if you haven't. Today's presentation, at its conclusion, there'll be a question and answer period. We ask that you put any questions you have during the talk into chat, and we'll take a look at them, and then we'll pose them to the speaker at the end, so we don't interrupt her during her time talking. So today, the topic is plastic-free cities, and it's a youth-led education campaign to prevent plastic pollution across Florida by engaging the local community and specifically business owners. High school students participate in a series of interactive training workshops about plastic pollution, sustainable business practices, public speaking, and community engagement. Then take their knowledge and skills into their communities to provide local business owners with tailored recommendations on how to reduce plastic waste and save money. Across the schools and approximately 300 students that have participated in the program so far, students have worked with businesses to prevent an estimated 1.2 million disposable plastic items from being used per year and have engaged their communities through cleanups, art events, radio talk shows, and media. Ocean Conservancy developed a free curriculum for this program with lesson plans and standard operating procedures so that any school or community group can pick it up and start making a difference to reduce single-use plastics in their community. The presentation will focus on the program and how to implement it locally. Our speaker today is Maggie Winchester Wheeler. She's a scientist and educator specializing in conservation and physiology of marine life, and the Florida Conservation Program Manager for the Ocean Conservancy. She's based in Miami. She coordinates stakeholders, governments, and youth to advocate for policies that maintain or improve the health of the ocean. Leveraging her scientific background, she informs research and public awareness campaigns to improve water quality and reduce marine debris statewide. A formal and informal educator of 9 years, she manages the Youth Empowerment and Plastic Reduction Program, referred to as Plastic-Free Cities, across Florida for the Ocean Conservancy. And with that, Maggie, I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Randy. I will get my screen set up here. Let me know if you can see that.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thanks for that great introduction. I'm really excited to talk more about plastic-free cities, and talk about plastic pollution in general and how we can create a plastic-free Florida through community action and advocacy. So, just a little bit about me. My name is Maggie Winchester Weiler. I am now the senior manager. That's an update since I sent you my bio,
Right.
Randy. I'm the senior manager for Florida Conservation for Ocean Conservancy. I do have a Master of Science in Marine Science, so I consider myself a scientist. I implement science in a lot of the things that I do. I'm also adjunct faculty for the University of New Hampshire and Cornell University, where I teach a shark conservation and biology course through Shoals Marine Lab. As Randy said, I have been a formal and informal educator for almost 10 years now. But really, I work for the Ocean Conservancy because I love the ocean. I'm a diver. I love to paddleboard. I just love to spend time out in nature. And that's what's inspired so much of my work. And a little bit more about Ocean Conservancy. If you're not familiar, Ocean Conservancy is the nation's oldest marine conservation nonprofit. We are a group of about 150 dedicated professionals that are scientists, attorneys, policy experts, outreach experts, all working together at the nexus of science and policy to make meaningful change for our ocean planet. We have a very big network of over 250,000 members and well over 3 million online ocean activists at this point. So we've been around for over 50 years. We've been doing this work for a long time, and we bring a lot of expertise with us. The our Ocean Conservancy is a programmatic based organization, which means we work in really collaborative teams across the US. While our headquarters are in Washington, D.C., we work around the country towards specific ocean priorities. Our work is usually related to federal and state policy. We work directly with legislators and rally ocean advocates to achieve our goals. Our work is informed largely, like I said, by science and knowledge and centered around the primary goals of cutting carbon, stopping pollution, and protecting biodiversity. These are very lofty goals that keep us very busy, but these are the steps that we need to achieve our goal of a healthier ocean protected by a more just world. And I'm really going to be focusing on that plastic piece, that stopping pollution piece. We've been working on plastic reduction for over 40 years, not just as an organization, but even specifically here in Florida. That's because an estimated between 19 and 23 million metric tons of plastic is entering our waterways and our ocean every single year. That is about 11% of the plastic that is produced every year. And by 2030, we expect to see that increase to almost 90 million metric tons of plastic entering our aquatic ecosystems. That's soon. And this was a study done in 2020. So even though, it's been 6 years since these numbers were released, 2030 is coming really soon. So this is a big issue. It's a global issue. It's certainly something that we see here in Florida. And we know that plastics are bad for wildlife, for the ocean, also for our own health. Sorry, I have a cat walking in front of my laptop. Um, Plastics don't ever go away. They only break down into smaller pieces. And while larger plastics can entangle or entrap wildlife, microplastics are ending up in our bodies, and we don't necessarily know the impact of what that is going to mean for us. But we do expect that they could be a real danger for human health. So far, studies have shown that microplastics have been found in our brains, in our lungs, in our digestive system, in our blood, in our hearts, and even in reproductive organs, both male and female, and in placentas. So that means microplastics are being transferred to the next generation before they've even really arrived. We don't necessarily, as I mentioned, we don't know what the impacts of all of these microplastics in our bodies really are for human health and those long-term consequences. But the reason we're concerned is because plastics aren't just fossil fuels. They're combined with chemicals to make them super durable, flame retardant. There's a lot of chemicals being added to plastics that are also present in microplastics. So having all of those chemicals in addition to microplastics in our bodies, while we don't know what the long-term impacts are, we're assuming that they're not going to be good, and we don't want those plastics to be there. One of Ocean Conservancy's long-term initiatives is the International Coastal Cleanup. We've been running it for over 40 years now, and this is a cleanup or an initiative that gets people all over the world 1 day a year to go to their coastlines, go to their parks, go just outside to their neighborhoods and pick up trash and keep track through our CleanSwell app what they're picking up and collect data. What over 40 years of data is showing us is that, especially in recent years, single-use plastics are becoming more of a problem every year. We keep track and release numbers about the top 10 items that are picked up each year. And increasingly, we're seeing single-use plastics showing up in that top 10. The most commonly found items globally and also in Florida are things like food wrappers, cigarette butts, plastic beverage bottles, aluminum cans, plastic caps, straws, stirrers, grocery bags, cups, plates. A lot of those things that I just listed are single-use plastic items. Every year, these are becoming more abundant. The convenience and the cheap cost of these products make them almost unavoidable in a lot of cases. And at the end of the day, all of this plastic has to go somewhere. And waste management is a real problem, not just across the country, but especially in Florida. Across the country, the average person produces about 5 pounds of trash per person per day. Here in Florida, those numbers look a little bit different. So, where I am down in Miami, we're producing about 10 pounds of trash per person per day. Over in your neighboring county of Hillsborough, people are producing about 14 pounds of trash per person per day. Your other neighbor of Sarasota is producing 18 pounds of trash per person per day. And I'm sure you're curious. Manatee County produces about 17 pounds of trash per person per day. This is well over the national average. So we're producing a lot of trash and it's got to go somewhere. We have to handle it somehow. Unfortunately, our options for waste management are very limited. We do have recycling, and some counties do it better than others, but recycling is limited because, first of all, every county, every municipality does it a little bit differently. They have their different facilities, and that means what they can accept is going to change from place to place. And in places where there's a lot of tourism, like down here in Miami, we get a lot of visitors and they might try to recycle correctly, but they don't know what is recyclable here. And there's a lot of misinformation. Here I have a photo of a Domino's pizza box that says, recycle this pizza box, where a lot of places can't actually take pizza boxes because of the grease that's left on the cardboard. So that is common misinformation, which makes it hard to recycle properly. And adding to that, a lot of single-use plastic items can't really be recycled effectively anyway because they clog machines and cause problems for recycling infrastructure. So recycling is a part of the solution, but it's not the solution. It has its challenges and its limitations. Another way that we manage our trash here in Florida is by landfilling, but a lot of our landfills are filling up. We're having to make space in landfills that already exist, or in some cases, ship our trash to other parts of the state or other states entirely. And then another option for waste management is waste to energy or incineration. This has its own challenges and problems associated with it. Waste to energy facilities contribute to climate change and significantly impact the communities around them. The majority of incinerators are located in historically marginalized communities and low-income communities. And these facilities generating energy is generally, you'd think a good thing, but it means you have to keep feeding the incinerator. So it actually incentivizes the continued production of more plastic and the continued generation of more waste in order to generate energy. So this isn't a great solution. None of these options are really great. Really, what we need to do is turn off the plastic tap. We need to stop using and generating as much waste as we are. We need to use fewer single-use plastics that are becoming so abundant, and we need to stop production and usage of plastic where it begins. And you might be wondering, so what about plastic bans? Can we implement plastic bans in order to help solve part of this problem? Banning single-use plastics can be a really effective way to reduce marine debris on our beaches and improve ocean health. Case studies in places like San Jose, California, have shown that banning plastic bags reduces plastic bag litter on the streets and even prevents bags from clogging storm drains, which can lead to flooding. Because bag bans and other single-use plastic bans are so effective, there's actually over 1,000 different forms of bans across the country. Here in Florida, however, we have a different situation. At the state level, we have a preemption against anything that can be considered a plastic container, which means individual municipalities can't ban anything like plastic bags, takeout containers, or cups. Anything that is single-use plastic that can be considered a container cannot be regulated by individual municipalities. So we really can't rely on the Florida legislature to get us out of this waste crisis. Although we do try, we try to fight this preemption every year. So in the meantime, however, while we wait for that to happen, there are lots of opportunities where voluntary actions can make a really big difference. And businesses are one of those avenues and one of those sectors that have this opportunity to be leaders and make a voluntary difference in waste reduction. This leads me to the Plastic Free Cities project. So, one way that we're navigating all of these hurdles in Florida is through youth leadership, working with high school students and youth to build up environmental leaders that can advocate against these issues. So, diving into the Plastic Free Cities project a little bit more, the program is made of three main components. The first being training sessions where students learn about plastic pollution, they learn about advocacy and being community leaders, and they learn about sustainable business and what a business needs to do in order to eliminate plastic. Once they've gone through all of these trainings, we go into business canvassing, where we go and knock door to door at all of the businesses around their school. They get to meet the owners, the managers, and they survey them and talk to them about ways that they can implement strategies to help them reduce single-use plastics. And I'm going to talk about those strategies a little bit more here shortly. And then the third part of this project, which is super important, is just community engagement. Getting the students to act as leaders in their communities, bring together their friends, their neighbors, their parents, and share all of these things that they're learning with the people around them so that they work towards building a community that cares about reducing single-use plastics and making their community cleaner and healthier. So, kind of diving into the business canvassing part of the program, because that is the most fun. Um, so, these are some photos of students going door to door, meeting with their local business owners and talking about reducing single-use plastics. So, when we do these business canvassing days, usually we would go in and start with a survey just to kind of understand how the businesses are. How their purchasing habits are, where they're using the most single-use plastics, and what their general attitudes are about reduction or making changes. So we start with a survey, and then usually the students will take that survey and kind of, go back to their school, look at the results, and then start working towards strategies that they'll come back and give recommendations to each business for. Sometimes during these visits, we have opportunities to offer specific programs or media opportunities, which I'll talk about more. Or in some cases, we can offer some sample products of alternatives that they can try out and use for a little bit. After the students have surveyed the businesses, like I said, based on the survey results, they'll kind of come up with a strategy to help the business actually implement some sort of plastic reduction program. When the students are coming up with this strategy, the four principles that they are building on, I'm going to talk about a little bit here. So when they go in, the first thing that they look to do is help find opportunities for the business to just reduce single-use plastic purchasing to begin with. If that's not an option, then they'll look at replacing some of the plastic items that they're using with reusable options if they're available. If neither of those options work, we'll talk about other alternatives, natural fiber disposables, or things that can go into a home compost to replace plastics. And then finally, if none of those are going to work, we talk about recycling and just educate about how a business can recycle properly at the very least. So diving into these four principles just a little bit, when I say number one, we look for opportunities to reduce single-use plastic purchasing, I'm talking about unnecessary plastic specifically. Here's a photo of, for example, some apples and some bananas that are wrapped in a plastic film. This isn't necessary. Just by cutting out these unnecessary films or like packaging, this is a great way for the business to immediately start saving money. And so this is why this is one of the first things we look for. If that's not an option, another simple idea is just to give out single-use plastic items like bags or utensils only upon request. For example, whenever I order takeout, I always tell them they can hold on to their disposable utensils because I have utensils at home and I don't want to just create, you know, a junk drawer full of all of the plastic utensils from takeout. And this is really effective. DoorDash actually did a study during the pandemic that showed that by adding a little checkbox in their app that said add utensils, giving customers the option whether or not they wanted plastic utensils or whether they're just going to use their utensils at home, just by adding that little feature, they saved millions of dollars because they didn't have to give out all of those plastic utensils. So this can be really impactful and it's a very simple thing to do. All it really requires is a little bit of signage and some training of the staff. So these are good places to start. And then if that's not an option or if they want to go a little bit further, they're a good way of replacing single-use plastics is with reusables, especially if they already have a dishwasher or if a lot of their business is dine-in. This is a little bit harder to implement for, say, takeout, but for restaurants that offer dine-in, things like reusable glasses, cups, plates, utensils, it really elevates the dining experience. It makes it feel fancier. It makes it feel like your money's going a little bit further. And it does save the restaurant money in the long run after they've made that initial investment. So if they have the infrastructure, this is a really great way for businesses to save money and reduce plastics. Win-win. But then in situations where, for example, if a restaurant doesn't have a dishwasher or needs a replacement for takeout containers, natural fibers can be a pretty good alternative. When I say natural fibers, I'm talking about things like paper, bamboo, wood, wheat straw. And a good way of telling if something is made of a natural fiber is it usually doesn't look like plastic. So all of the examples here on my slide, these all kind of look like paper, and that's a good way of telling that they are in fact made of natural fibers. It's really important if switching away from single-use plastics to something like this, that is, it is a natural fiber, I'm stressing that, because another alternative that's out there that doesn't work as well are bioplastics. Natural fibers can go into your home compost or backyard compost heap. You can just throw them in dirt and they will break down in a few months. Bioplastics, like the straw that I'm showing on in this slide, they are not made from fossil fuels, but they still behave and look a lot like plastic. And that's because they are manufactured in a very similar process. And sometimes they even have the same additives. They also break down into microfibers and microplastics in the same way that traditional plastics do. They are called bioplastics and they can advertise as compostable because they will break down in industrial compost facilities. We do not have any of those facilities in Florida. Those are big facilities that are turning compost at a really high heat, at a really specific rate, with a certain amount of oxygen, and we don't have those here, which means those bioplastic straws, agave straws, avocado straws, they are, if they go into a compost, they won't break down. or if they end up in a landfill, they will behave as a traditional plastic. So when switching away from single-use plastics to a alternative like this, natural fibers are really, really important. And then those natural fibers need to actually end up in a compost heap. That's very important. And then finally, the last thing that students will kind of look for or talk to the business owners about is just proper recycling. Like I said, recycling rules can vary from place to place, so it's really important that everybody knows what their recycling bin is going to take. So if you're getting your recycling through Manatee County, you can recycle your milk jugs, your water bottles, 2-liter bottles, as long as they're all clean and empty. That's pretty much it for plastics as far as I could see. Although I do know that Manatee County has a really great website. So if you're not sure about what can be recycled, you can enter it there and they'll tell you. For other products, all unbroken glass is accepted, metal and aluminum cans are accepted, and paper and cardboard are easy to recycle. What's really important is that none of these things are in a plastic bag. As long as they're not in a bag, they can be recycled pretty easily. So this is a final step, and at the very least, good education for businesses. And during canvassing, students are really looking for some specific opportunities for the businesses. The first, as you've probably guessed, they're looking for ways that the business can save money. It's a common misconception, although not for a bad reason, that alternatives to plastic can be expensive. And they can be expensive in certain situations, but there's ways to find cost savings, like I was talking about earlier, with replacing single-use plastics with reusables if the infrastructure is there. There are opportunities to save money and reduce plastic. And so the students try and find those to make it not a burden on the businesses and something really easy and great that the businesses can do. They also look for opportunities to implement waste reducing infrastructure. So this means looking for ways that reduce plastic. They might still use plastic. For example, this soda machine will use uh, plastic bags to hold their syrups to generate the soda. But if you can implement something like a soda fountain like this, you can eliminate the need for lots and lots of single-use bottles that are housing soda instead. So if there's an opportunity to switch from individual bottles to bulk infrastructure like this can also reduce waste while also saving money in the long run past that initial investment. They also look for opportunities to implement creative reuse programs. This is a little bit harder. Some restaurants are able to incorporate things like reusable takeout container programs, or delivery, or like delivery services for plastic-free products. This is harder to do. It's been done very effectively in other states, but it is hard in Florida. But the students will still tell businesses that these are options, and if they are interested, it is something that they can implement. And then finally, we look for opportunities to really celebrate the businesses that are doing a good job. And if businesses want to make changes, we try to support them and promote them. And one example is here you can see a local news station interviewing and capturing some students at a business talking to the business owner about reducing plastic. So it's great promotion for the business, and shows that businesses care about reducing plastic and gets the message out. So really, when we canvas, the goals are first and foremost, of course, we're trying to reduce single-use plastics. But at the end of the day, it's also about educating owners and the staff at these restaurants and businesses about plastic pollution. Even if they don't make any changes, it's really valuable to show businesses that their community and their youth care about this. So at the very least, we are reaching businesses and showing them that this is important. If possible, it's great to help businesses save money and bring in more customers. We want these businesses to thrive. So this is also another goal of the canvassing. And something that we saw through a couple of the cities that we worked with, especially, they're really eager to enhance their community pride and they don't want to see litter on the streets. They want to show off how beautiful their city or their municipality is. So being able to reduce plastics is a great way of showing that they care about the community. And community buy-in, as you probably guess, or you probably see at this point, community buy-in is absolutely key. In order for businesses to want to make changes and reduce plastic, they need to know that their community is going to support and embrace these changes. This is why we intentionally built community events into the program. While businesses work towards plastic reduction, we need to see a culture shift away from convenience and single-use products towards a circular economy that values reuse and reduction. So, the community engagement part of this project, we've seen students lead all sorts of forms of activities to engage their community. This is a photo of a cleanup, a pretty productive cleanup, but we've had students table at community events. We had one group get involved in their local Oktoberfest and run ocean trivia and talk about plastic and lead a cleanup during the Oktoberfest. We've had students lead art workshops where they made art out of recycled debris from cleanups. The students get so creative, but it's really just about bringing everybody together to spread that message. And like I said, build a community that's going to support businesses that are using less plastic. And throughout the program, this next slide has some big photos, so it takes a moment to load. Throughout the program, we've had some really great opportunities to go beyond just events and have students speak to the community through a broader uh, lens, through a bigger platform. This has included having students go on radio talk shows and talk on the public radio. We've had students table at a variety of different events to reach more people and talk about plastic. We've had them talk at workshops and panel discussions in all sorts of different formats. And then we've also had them on the news talking about what they're doing and the importance to them about reducing plastic. Having students speak in these bigger formats is super impactful because, first of all, I'm always just very impressed anytime I see a high school student speaking better than I do in front of a large audience. But people take it to heart. It really means something when a student is at the forefront of the message. So this has been really important as well. My slides are starting to take a little bit longer to load. Sorry about that. Another important aspect of this program has been engaging elected officials so that they can learn about the program, work with the students, and really importantly, learn about the community needs and what the barriers currently are to preventing plastic pollution. As a result of elected officials being involved in the program, we've actually seen two different municipalities enact single-use plastic bans on their city property, which is allowed under the state preemption. As long as cities are confined to their own city properties, they're allowed to ban plastic. So we've seen two different municipalities do that so far. But then we've also seen Miami-Dade County and as of last week, the city of Miami um, incorporate pass resolutions that limit the single-use plastics that are used by their concessionaires and contractors. So what they have done is basically written in a clause where all contractors and concessionaires must prevent single-use plastic to the best of their ability, so they have to limit it wherever they can. And that includes the Miami International Airport. So some of these contractors and concessionaires are huge and have a huge impact if they limit their plastic. So these are a couple really amazing results that we've seen of involving these elected officials. And also, our students have had amazing opportunities to speak at city council meetings, commission meetings, and they've even gotten some tributes and certificates of appreciation from elected officials. So this has been a really cool part of the project and definitely important in some of the broader impacts. And so far across the 4 cities that we've run this program, we've worked with almost 400 youth leaders. They've met with uh, about 150 different businesses, and it has led to the prevention of 1.2 million single-use plastic items annually. These are numbers that we've been able to capture. This doesn't even reflect businesses that we haven't surveyed after the fact. And at the very least, even businesses that didn't commit to making changes with us in like face to face, they still were educated by these youth and they gained resources and tools to implement plastic reduction strategies in the future. So it's been a really amazing program. It covers a lot of different facets, but it's been really impactful so far. And as I kind of wrap up here in my next couple slides, the message is really in order to restore our beautiful, unique Florida ecosystems, we have to work together as communities. We have opportunities to influence legislature, but our voluntary choices are also really important. And I want to share some of the wins that we've had in the legislature as well, because that also plays into things. While right now we have a state preemption that prevents us from banning single-use plastics, we really hope one day that changes. So far at the Florida state level, we have seen in 2021 the state removed a preemption on cigarette smoking bans, which is huge because cigarette butts are one of the most commonly picked up items off of our beaches. And up until 2021, municipalities didn't have the ability to ban smoking on their beaches or in their public parks. And now, as of 2021, they're allowed to. And then in 2024, we also worked with the legislature to ban the intentional release of balloons. And this is significant because balloons are one of the deadliest items for sea creatures to ingest. If ingested, there's a very high chance that they'll end up dying. So so banning the intentional release of balloons was also very important. And then on a more local level, since 2021, since that preemption on smoking, on banning the smoking of cigarettes on beaches was removed, there's been over 60 different municipalities that have banned smoking on beaches. And while we haven't published this yet, we are starting to see that cigarette butts are decreasing on the beaches that have implemented these bans. So it's working. And that's really, really amazing. We're also seeing more counties and cities banning single-use plastics in their contracts and on city property, as I mentioned, since that is kind of a loophole in the state preemption. So we are seeing wins, and we are really proud of that. But we're also facing attacks against the ocean on the federal level. Right now, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is facing massive budget cuts, with the administration citing their work to combat climate change, sea level rise, and plastic pollution as wasteful spending. The Plastic Free Cities project is just one example of the type of impactful projects that NOAA funds. But even more urgently, NOAA funds our hurricane forecasting and modeling, which is really important, especially for us here in Florida. Right now, the NOAA has been facing budget cuts for the last year. They were actually funded at a stable level last year, but this is a continuing conversation. The president's budget will be coming out in a few weeks, and we continue to expect cuts to NOAA's budget, proposed cuts against NOAA. So this is something that our representatives need to know. NOAA is very important to us and it provides essential services, and the budget should not be cut. So, with that, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. As Randy mentioned, the curriculum and all of the materials for the Plastic Free Cities program are freely available. If you would like to implement this in your own community or just want any of the resources, I am happy to share them. You can get them by reaching out to me. My email is listed there, or by emailing florida@oceanconservancy.org. And also, I have a QR code that you can scan with your phone there if you are interested in going to our Action Center on our website and learning about some of the other work that we're doing at a federal level. And also, in a few weeks, I expect we will have another NOAA Action Alert go up there as well. So, with that, thank you so much, and I will take any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Maggie. Appreciate that. We do have a couple questions, and before we get to those, John, did you get that contact information, John Derevik, off the screen? I know you had asked about that in the chat. Hopefully you got that. And okay, so the questions are um, from Alice. I like the idea that it costs less. I can see that restaurants can save. Plastic bags are really cheap, however. Do the students ever work with groceries? I guess grocery stores, you meant?
Yeah, so the first iteration of this project, because we've been working on this for about 3 years now. The first iteration of the project, we did try a couple grocery stores, a couple of the smaller ones. Um, as you may be aware, it is not easy to work with stores like Publix, but we did try and work with some of the smaller grocery stores, and unfortunately, we were kind of always deferred to the larger branch. And this was the case for some of the um, franchise restaurants that we visited as well. So I think there's opportunity. I think it would take a lot more work and probably beyond the capabilities of the students. Um, so we ended up focusing a lot on restaurants because they were a little bit easier to work with.
Okay, all right. Sounds reasonable. Do you partner with science museums, schools, churches, and are there any groups you're working with now that are sort of out in this part of the state that we could maybe connect with?
Yeah, well, we definitely work. I mean, to implement this program, we worked with the school district. So we've implemented this in Miami-Dade County and Orange County. So we worked with those public school systems to bring schools on board. And now we're working with those school systems to try and reduce plastic at kind of a bigger scale across the school system. We Our headquarters is actually based out of St. Petersburg. So yes, we've got lots of partners in that general region. And while I'm based in Miami, I'm happy to connect you to my colleagues over in the St. Pete office, and they've got lots of connections in that area that would be, could help with facilitating a program like this.
All right, good, terrific. And that kind of ties into the next question. It seems like working with the students, you need someone to train, work with them. Sort of, how does that happen?
Yeah, so the model that we used, we've tried a couple different things. We worked with the school system and implemented this as an after-school program. So usually we would just find a teacher that was super passionate, and usually a club to kind of work into, although in some cases we kind of created our own club. But if there's a school that has a really passionate teacher that's running something like a green club or even a service club like National Honor Society, um, or I think Beta Club is a service society, that's a great place go to the schools, or in the case of Orlando, where I don't live there, we trained staff to go into the schools and deliver the lessons, and then kind of work with the teacher to facilitate getting the students off campus and um, bringing them out to do the canvassing. That's how we ran it. In the future, we're starting to think about running this as like a independent program where students can sign up, and that way you just train everybody at once, and then you kind of plan from there, meeting up at different shopping plazas or like places where there's a lot of businesses to do the canvassing, I think that would work really well, as long as you have a space to meet in.
All right. What were the four cities? You mentioned it was four cities implemented, and you mentioned Miami. I was wondering what the other ones are.
Yeah, so we started in Hialeah. We worked in Doral, Miami, and Orlando. And we're hoping, I think the next area we really want to work in is actually the Tampa St. Pete area, um, potentially Manatee, but we are just waiting for a good funding opportunity to get that off the ground.
And does that funding usually you guys go out and find that funding? It's not up to the individual program or school group.
Yeah, we ran this as a free program for all of the students that participated. The whole body of work has been funded by the NOAA Marine Debris Program and then um, NOAA's Sea Grant through Florida Sea Grant.
Okay. You mentioned early on in your presentation, you gave some numbers, the average waste per person per day, and Manatee was, up there pretty high. What do you think attributes to, Sarasota was high, Manatee is high. With other example, I can't remember if it was Orlando or not, but what do you think leads to our average being much higher than nationally?
I mean, so I think there's a couple things. The first being, and I'm just saying this for complete transparency as a scientist, the 5 pounds per person per day national average is from 2018. All of the other numbers in Florida are from 2024. So there is a gap there. I don't know if that makes up the whole difference. I suspect it doesn't. Having spoken to a lot of folks around the state, especially in counties where the waste production is really high, I feel like tourism is a piece of it. Um, just because recycling can be really challenging for people that don't live here. Like if you don't know what is supposed to get recycled, it's really easy to contaminate the recycling bin. And if there's things in the recycling bin that aren't recyclable, a lot of times the whole bin just ends up going to the landfill. So I think that's maybe a piece of it as well. We're not recovering material because there's a lot of tourism. Um, but otherwise, I'm not totally sure. Those are the two things I can offer.
Okay. One thing my wife and I run into is if we order takeout, sometimes there is that check off, you want plasticware or not. It doesn't seem to matter. Even if you say no, the people just used to throwing the knife and fork or whatever into the bag. And it's sort of a pet peeve of ours, to say the least.
I agree with that. It's gotten worse, right? Like
Yeah.
for a while there, the button meant something, and I don't know that the button means anything to everyone anymore. But a really important part of that is training. I know it's tough with platforms like DoorDash or Uber Eats, but I feel like it wouldn't be that hard to implement some sort of like a training into those platforms to make sure, the restaurants know that that's an option and like they should be looking for that box. That's just my thought.
Yep. No, sounds reasonable. Are there any other questions or comments? All right. If not, well, we thank you, Maggie. This is very enlightening to say the least, and we'll see where we go with this. As Alice mentioned, as we were chatting before the meeting, we will share it with some, high school groups that we know of locally here, and we have a very active education committee where they can also assist in getting the word out. And it sounds like you just need that one person to really take hold of it, and they can run
Well,
with it.
I think what struck me is you got whole school districts to buy in, correct?
Well, so we've worked with Miami-Dade public school system and then Orange County public school systems, and they have supported us like connecting or they've supported connecting us with schools. Miami-Dade though is very interesting because we are starting to work with it's been years in the making, but we're starting to work with the whole school system to look for places to reduce waste. And it's taken a lot to get there, and there's a lot of barriers still ahead, but they're considering it. They're starting to implement compost pilots. So they're looking to do it. It's just
And
it
so
is
this
tough.
is not, this is the program that you're talking about is, okay, you brought this for the students, but they said, oh, well, let's just look at our school system and see if we can reduce waste within the school system. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, I will also give a lot of credit to the students because once you start having these conversations, they start looking at their own cafeterias and they're like, why is it like this? Why is everything single use? Like, this is such a problem. Why don't we have a dishwasher? So the students pressuring the district is huge. And also, PTAs are incredibly powerful. As soon as the parents are invested, that's where I feel like a lot of change happens too. So the combination of students and parents pressuring the school board, that seems like the ticket.
Oh, okay. And so in reality, a lot of time, have you partnered at all with any other organizations besides churches? I mean, besides schools, sorry. I was thinking, okay, maybe churches, maybe science museums, maybe something like that. Have you partnered with anything besides high school districts or school groups?
Yeah, I mean, so this work has kind of has branched into a couple other projects as well. Um, we do work with a lot of local organizations in across the state, and we've had some really great partners specifically on this work. But some of the bigger impacts that are still kind of pending that started from this work have been, or one thing that I'm really excited about is we're working on doing a reusable cup pilot with the Kia Center in Orlando. So they are looking to switch to reusables entirely for their concert venue, um, which houses 20,000 people per event. So that would be huge. We're trying to do a pilot with them so that for a couple events, they only use reusable cups. They see how it goes. They're really interested in doing that long term. So they just want to get some numbers about the feasibility. So we've ended up doing things like that. Um, we've also worked with smaller venues across Miami as well to implement similar strategies just to reduce plastic.
Okay. Anything else, Alice? Question was? No. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, Maggie. Terrific. I hope we can generate something over this part of the state to get going. It sounds like a terrific program, and getting the young people involved would be wonderful. So thanks.
Of course.
Um, and okay, next month, April 16th, our next meeting, and that is on low impact sustainable development. We have a speaker from the Marine Resources Council, which is over in Indian Lagoon area, will be speaking with us. So that's April 16th, 5 o'clock on Zoom. Is there anything anybody else wants to bring up today?